I think I got it. You're right. You got to mash it and then slide it forward.
You're all good to go. The string is on too.
Okay. Well, I'll get started then.
Yes.
All right, 2 o'clock. How's that? Can we hear me in the back row? Priscilla, y'all, I'm Rob Hooks. I'll explain all this in a minute. Priscilla Hooks is my stepmother. So her goal is to tell me if I start talking too fast. So if she starts doing this, I'm talking too fast. Back row, if you can't hear me, give me a talk loud or something like that, if you would, as I explain this. Well, welcome everybody. I was so glad that we could figure out, because I like coming to visit Priscilla here, and it was a chance to give this talk, which we like to get out and let people kind of know some stuff of with the organization that I'm in. So my name is Rob Hooks. I'm the board chairman of a nonprofit in Morganton called the Exploring Jawara Foundation. Jawara, and you're going to hear that through this talk, is the name of a Native American village that's about 5 miles north of Morganton as a crow flies. It gets into the foothills of the mountains there. There's a lot of valleys that run along in the mountains in the Piedmont. Jawara was a Native American village. Actually, it was a capital city, they think. There was probably 2,000 people or more that lived there. So I'm going to talk to you about that. The organization I'm with, the Exploring Jawara Foundation, again, I'm the board chairman. I live in Hickory, North Carolina. I've been there for 10 years now. They had a 450th anniversary celebration of the Spanish being in that part of North Carolina. When I first moved to Hickory, I went. It was very interesting. By trade, I was an airline pilot. I just retired last year. I have nothing to do with archaeology other than I love history. And this was fascinating because this is the history I didn't know. I mean, I'm a product of North Carolina public schools. I went to Terry Sanford High in Fayetteville. I went to the University of Georgia. I know there's a lot of archaeology in Native American villages. What I never heard of is that the Spanish were here. The Spanish were here in 1567, and we're going to get into that story here. So thank you for having me. I brought some displays. You can stop by afterwards. I know they need the room at 3 o'clock, but I want some stuff to look at. There are some artifacts over here from the site, which is called where this Jawara is. I've got pieces of pottery laid out. You pick those up and take a look at them if you want to. They're 450 to 500 to 600 years old, and they look like they were carved yesterday. I mean, we find the pieces that come up out of the dirt when they're doing digging at the site. So I will get started on the story. If you would, hold your questions to the end, and then I am more than happy to hang out as long as we want to. I got nothing to rush back to Hickory for. I took Priscilla to lunch already. We went and did Smithfield. So I'm around. I can answer questions till Jake kicks me out. So anyway, welcome. And again, I'm Rob Hooks, and let's get started with the first one. So in 1540, this is Hernando de Soto, and we probably all heard of de Soto. Hernando de Soto comes out of Cuba, and he's going to explore what's called La Florida. La Florida is pretty much everything that's on this map. That is Spain in what is now North America. I mean, they were out at Santa Fe. We'll go over here. But the main thing they wanted to explore and find was looking for a route to the silver mines in Mexico. So Hernando de Soto in 1540 comes out of Cuba. He lands about Tampa. And with an army of at least 600 soldiers plus their family, they had horses, pigs, cows, everything. This giant army starts moving up north. They come to, this is about Valdosta, Georgia, right around in here. He explores through this part of South Carolina. Where the arrow is pointing is a town that he called on his journals Xwalla, X-U-A-L-L-A. I'll show you that in a second. It's pretty much Jawara, which is the town I mentioned the other day, or just now. So we think he was at Jawara. They get to the mountains there, and that's Morganton, where the end of the yellow area is. They turn westbound, looking for the route to Mexico. He goes into Georgia, he goes into Alabama, he goes into Mississippi. He gets to the banks of the Mississippi River. De Soto gets killed by the Native Americans. And that part of the exploration is over. There's lots of journals. They know the Spanish knew what he was finding, knew what he was doing. So in 1565 and 1566, they established St. Augustine and Santa Elena. Santa Elena is Parris Island, South Carolina right now. In fact, the city that was there is the driving range of the Officers Golf Club on the Marine Base at Parris Island, Beaufort, South Carolina. So they made Santa Elena the capital. St. Augustine didn't have that big fort yet. They haven't done that. So this is in 1566. In late 1566 and early 1567, they actually ended up having too many men at the fort in South Carolina. So they came up they had a captain there with his army, and they decided to send him out to try to find the route to Mexico that De Soto couldn't find. So to give you what he was looking for is Santa Elena up there at Beaufort. Jawara was a large Native American city that I said De Soto had mentioned, and they were trying to find a way to here. Their maps weren't good, as we all know. I know you've seen them, and they're really kind of terrible, because they didn't do longitude. They could do latitude. They couldn't figure longitude. So they thought you could go through the mountains over here by Morganton and Boone and find your way to the silver mines down here in Zacatecas. That wasn't going to happen. But in 1566, this army leaves Santa Elena. It follows Native American roads from Santa Elena, and again, that is Beaufort, South Carolina. They go out of Santa Elena, they stop at some Native American villages, cutting their way over. They knew from the Native Americans that this big city of Zuala was up here in the mountains. So they were following known trails. The Spanish didn't invent this. They were roads that were there. The Native Americans used them all the time. They go up with this army, and they get to Zuala, and again, that's Morganton. Otari here is, for reference, is Charlotte-ish. Rock Hill, Charlotte, that area. Quatari, the one with the G, that's pretty much Salisbury out to the east. Those names will come back in a minute. We don't know those forts. We know that's where he's going to have some forts. So this Captain Juan Pardo and his army go up here. They get to Zuala. It's December 1567. And there's snow on the mountains, and they go, that's it, we're done. We can't cross the mountains, and they call it a day. They stop, and they build a fort. So this fort now becomes, here's the great part that gives me goosebumps. This is the first European settlement in the interior of what's now the United States. 25 years before the Lost Colony, 40 years before the English at Jamestown, this is a European settlement in the interior of the United States. I just think that's fascinating. History major that I am, that hooked me. So what Juan Pardo did was and I'm saying this with this drawing because this is what they found and they know this is here. This is a modern photograph of the site. I've got another one over here you can look at later. That's a photograph. There's a road around the base of that mountain. Over here on the far side, there's a creek called Upper Creek. It flows into, I don't know if y'all are anybody's familiar with that area around Morganton. There's a river called the Johns River. This creek flows into that. This was a huge settlement. They built 5 houses around a plaza. That's a European design. The archaeologists that I deal with, they look for signs that, yeah, this is it, this is what we're doing, this is what we're finding. The archaeologists find the footprints of 5 houses, which you can see over there around the plaza. They built a fort, which fort's kind of a misnomer. It was more somewhere that they would be able to run to if they had problems or something. It had a palisade. It's about the size of 2 basketball courts-ish. It had a moat around it. I'll show you some pictures of that. They found the moat, and that's how they determined it was the fort. And there was a mound here. Not sure if that was a burial mound or not. It was a mound, may have been religious. I'll stop for a second, back up. In the 1890s, the Smithsonian Institution did an inventory all up and down all of these mountains from Virginia to Lenore, to Morganton, down toward Asheville, and they cataloged all of these mounds. So they know they're there. They knew they were there. They weren't excavated, but they found farmers' fields that had mounds in them. Unfortunately, in the 1950s, this farmer bulldozed this mound down. Now they find the footprint of the mound, but there was nothing left of the mound. They don't know if there was any bodies or anything in it like that. But this is, the fort is called Fort San Juan. There's three names for this place. Fort San Juan is the Spanish fort. The village, the houses was called Canica. The Spanish captain named it after his hometown in Spain, which was Canica. And the Native American capital was called Jawara. Now, on this picture in the real world, way down here would have been the Native American village. Over here to the side where the people are working in the fields. There was probably 2,000-ish people that lived there at the time. They haven't even started excavating that. I was this weekend with one of the archaeologists, and they were saying there's 2 generations of work left out there because it's slow and meticulous. But anyway, that's where it is in relation to downtown Morganton. If you've ever been to Morganton, you're familiar with it. This Highway 181 here goes up to Linville Falls. So it's, as the crow flies from Morganton, it's hardly 5 miles north. It is literally in a farmer's field next door to a bunch of tree farms that fill those valleys out there, if you've ever been in that part of North Carolina. In the spring, so the Spanish settled this fort in 1567, or 1566, 1567. In the spring of 1567, Juan Pardo, the captain, leaves 18 men at that village. He goes to explore eastern North Carolina. He gets out to the next star that I told you, Guattari is Salisbury, in his records. He comes on back down. Otari, again, as I point out, is Charlotte. I never can pronounce. Cotakefke is a village just east of Columbia, South Carolina. I want you to remember this picture. You'll see it again. This triangle of Jawara to Guattari to Cotakefke in there. You'll see this again, which is a very cool part of the story, I think. He goes back, the captain goes back to Santa Helena to get some more soldiers to help finish this exploration. He starts a second expedition in the spring of 1568, where he goes back up, and then he gets to Jawara, the Red Star, and they can get across the mountains, they get into Tennessee, and they build a fort there, much like the fort at Jawara. But it doesn't last. The Native Americans are not putting up with the Spanish Act. They don't like what the Spanish are demanding of them. They're not getting anything in return. So, in what they think is a coordinated attack, the Native Americans kill all the Spanish soldiers at Jawara, at Guattari, and at Cotakefke. They think it was at the same night. So they coordinated this and they killed all the soldiers. One guy lives. He makes it back, he said, traveling at night, which the archaeologists I've talked to don't believe, traveling at night, and he gets back to Santa Elena at Paris Island, goes back to Spain with his wife, who is a Native American woman. So that's probably how he got back safely, with his wife. And they know this because 30 years later, they found in the Spanish records where she applied for his pension. So they knew her name, they knew how much pension he was going to get, they knew where they had come from. So this all confirms all of this story, which is fascinating because I thought she applied for his pension. That was kind of neat. So they get back, and he gets back. The Spanish are done in this part of North America. They haven't found their way to Mexico. They can't get to the silver. Other routes are opening up through the Gulf of Mexico, whatever you wish to call it today. They basically become done in this part of North America. So they're all gone, and this is 1568. Now in 1585, 1590, that's when the English come to and found the lost colony. Jamestown, as you remember, is going to be 1607. So basically there are no Europeans out here. The first Europeans that are going to show up again is when the English settle the Roanoke Island. In the 1700s, after the Roanoke Island is settled, the English start moving across North Carolina. In the 1700s, there was a family named the Berries who bought the land that this site is on, and they farmed it. And as they farmed for the last 300 plus years, they find pieces of pottery, they find stuff. A lot of it they save. They have boxes of it. I mean, you'll see some in my display case here. Nothing exciting. Well, it was exciting, but nothing that would tell you that it was a Spanish. They had a nephew, who you'll see a picture of him in a minute. As a kid, he walked the fields and he found pieces of pottery that was red. It wasn't like this. This is what Native American pottery looks like. Again, there's several pieces laid out here. Please, after we get done, come up and take a look at it. It's 500 years old, but take care when you pick it up, but you can pick it up and handle it. The incisions on it, the designs and sizing is just gorgeous. Looks like it was done yesterday. So this kid, and his name's Robin Beck, he would find pieces of this red pottery. He didn't know that it wasn't supposed to be there, but it's not. And there was a professor, or a student at the University of North Carolina, who was working on his PhD about the possibility of a Spanish fort somewhere. So they eventually get together and they realize that this is Spanish pottery, and it's not Native American. It shouldn't be there. The Spanish carried a lot of pottery. They have the records of what the Spanish carried on their expedition, because they got X amount of pots, they got X amount of nails. It was all, very cataloged, very orderly, what they could carry. They even had listed on their manifest a set of scales that you would hold to weigh, say, gunpowder. They found these, the archaeologists found these scales. So it's like, oh my gosh, you keep going, you're finding this stuff that proves it. So this is what Kanika looks like, Kanika and Fort San Juan and Jawara, the city. This is what it looks like today out there. It's a beautiful little valley. It's known as 31 BK. So 31 is the state of North Carolina, BK is Burke County. It's the 22nd site found in Burke County. So from the overhead view, you can see, I showed you earlier, there was 5 houses at the top. That's where the Spanish lived. They knew the Native Americans took care of them because there was things in fire pits they found that the Spanish wouldn't have done. The Native Americans would have helped them with it. I showed you a picture of the mound. This is where the mound would have been. This is the summer they uncovered the fort, and they were looking at the moat and digging around it. This summer, actually, this has been uncovered, and there's a house here. It's 40 feet long by about 15 or 20 feet wide, and they've already found, at the end of last summer, they found 3 fire pits. Now, I'll stop for a second and tell you, I say this last summer and this summer, every year for the last 20 years, there has been archaeology going on at this site. The 3 archaeologists, I'll show you their picture in a minute, from Tulane University, from Warren Wilson College in Swannanoa, and from the University of Michigan, they come down, and University of North Carolina, they come with their archaeology students, and they dig here for about 4 weeks. It starts getting hot in the middle of June, but they go from mid-May to mid-June. And then we have some summer archaeology summer camps that my group sponsors, and they come and work another month or 2 every summer. So this summer, and I was just talking with them on Saturday, they're going to be working on digging this native house up because they wanted to decide if the Native Americans were living near the Spanish or if the Spanish were living away from the village for safety's sake. This is kind of a diagram of it, but I wanted to show you this picture on your right over here. That's a ground penetrating radar that you see the fort. That's the moat around where the fort was. Let me step over here. So they dug a trench here, kind of speculating where the fort was in 2008, I think it was. And they found the V shape. The trench was deep enough to see the V shape and the different shades of the dirt. So the trench / moat, and here it is, the ground radar. They have not excavated this, but that's what the ground radar looks like for the moat that went around the fort. It was probably 12 feet deep, 6 to 12 feet, and about 6 to 12 feet wide. And the fort, it was really interesting, bowed out in the corners, which was a Spanish design, so we keep going, prove it's Spanish, prove it's Spanish, prove it's Spanish, and this is. This is a Spanish design. So an archer on this corner didn't have to fire down the wall. The wall bowed, and if somebody was coming in, he could fire that direction and get them. He could turn and fire the other direction, or with his guns. They had not great guns, but they had them. But this is the fort, and that's what it really looked like. This is some archaeological drawings of what they found and how they plotted the structures. Those are the 5 houses, and you can see there's a plaza, quadrangle in the middle. They found, this was last summer, they dug into this part of where the mound was, and you can see the difference. What amazed me as a non-archaeologist, they can look at that and they can see where individual baskets of dirt were dumped, because they would bring in baskets of dirt on their backs from different places in the area. So you have all these round circles of different color that was the dirt that was packed in, that this one Native American brought from over there and this one brought from over there. So that's what Fort San Juan looked like in 1567 and 1568. That's a picture of what the floors look like of the excavated houses. Structure 1, Structure 5 was a fairly large one. I think it was in Structure 2, which is up at the far corner. That's where they found a collapsed bench. When the Native Americans killed them, they burned the buildings down or used them for something else. They found a collapsed bench, and underneath that bench is where they found the scales. The scales were so rusted away, it was kind of only their outline in the dirt. You know how rust flakes and leaves flakes. That's where they found that. So they've been out digging for 22 years. These are the primary archaeologists. This is Dr. Beck, and so that's his aunt and uncle's farm. They allow, and their name is Barry, he's a cousin. They allow the ongoing dig at their good graces. It is not the state of North Carolina. It is not any archaeological something. They allow them to do them. The artifacts are stored, or actually they're going this next week to the North Carolina State Office of Archaeology, and they're all going to be stored there. We've cataloged them. There's thousands and thousands of pieces. Over the years, they've been cataloging them, and they're in boxes up in Raleigh for study. So this is Dr. Beck. He's the younger one of them, basically. Dr. Moore was it was his PhD about the idea of where the fort was and that they found it. And it was Dr. Beck took the pottery to Dr. Moore, and they went, oh, this is not Native American, it's not Moravian. The only thing it could be is Spanish. So that's where they decided this was a good spot to dig. This is Dr. Rodning. He's from Tulane University. Again, that's his students that come up. And that's Dr. Briggs on the right. She's a professor of archaeology at UNC. So those 4 schools, and they also advertise it out because the students get credit when they come dig there for their archaeology classes. So they usually, either 1 to all 4 of them are out there every summer at some point digging or coordinating the digs. They find stuff like this, which again, as I mentioned, we love proving are Spanish artifacts. There's a bolt which comes off the head of a crossbow. They found Spanish bolts. Dagger tips, that was off the end of a case of a dagger. And again, as they find this stuff in the contact period, it wouldn't have been anywhere else. There were no English, and there were no French. The only people that could be leaving metal in this time period was Spanish. Things they would not necessarily have traded: plate armor, the lead balls. They find nails. Chainmail armor. I was actually out there one day. I go out as a volunteer occasionally, going through the dirt, and I found a piece of the chainmail, and it was like, well, that's the coolest thing ever. It's a little tiny circle, because if you remember chainmail, they kind of knit it all together. I found a piece of chainmail, and I was so excited. Copper aglets. Aglets are on your shoestrings. The plastic tip that's on your shoestring, they use metal. So they found copper aglets the Spanish had. The olive jar sherds, that was the big giveaway for the type of pottery that is. And then the remains of the scales we talked about. These are a lot of the Native American artifacts. Again, it's their history too, because this was a big village. This was a capital city. So they find lots and lots of stuff. In fact, there are so many pieces of pottery. This year they're thinking about not even bothering to catalog it, because there is so much. And what they're finding, if it's not in context, it's kind of, yeah, it's neat, but it doesn't show us that there was a building here or anything. They may quit cataloging it, which is a shame because you find beautiful pieces, and you'll see some of them over here. Arrowheads, spear points, gaming pieces. I've got a couple in the display case. Beads, pipes. Sometimes they find animal bones. They have to look at what they are. The pipes are very interesting. If they find a pipe bowl, they don't clean it out. That goes to a laboratory because the labs can clean it out and go, oh, they were putting this kind of weed in their pipe bowl, or they were putting this in there, or whatever they were smoking at the time. So we don't disturb that when we find them. Here's some of the artifacts and the features. Great trivia. A feature, in their language, archaeologists, again, I'm not, I'm just a lowly pilot. A feature is something like a fire pit. This is a fire pit. Or a post hole, as the case may be. And an artifact is something man-made, okay? Like the pieces of pottery, the drill point right there, those are going to be artifacts. And this is a good picture. This is how far down they're having to go to find the floors of the houses. So this part of the dirt right here, so it's about 2 feet or so, that's called the plow zone. That's the part that's been turned over since the 1700s from plowing and farming. It's over the whole area. When they go out to work, and I can do this, I'm not allowed to dig on that, but we take a shovel, you go through, you sift it, and you find all that pottery. That comes out of the plow zone. That kind of stuff has been moved as you plow. You know, it turns up, if you ever walked a field somewhere and you found a piece of pottery, you found an arrowhead, it may not have been from there, it probably wasn't far away, but over the hundreds of years, it's gotten plowed and moved. So we find all of that kind of stuff in the plow zone. When they go out there to dig, and they dig in this plow zone, literally every shovelful of dirt has a piece of pottery in it. You don't find the whole pots. I think they've maybe only found 2 whole ones the entire time they've been digging there, but you find all these great pieces. This is when we have the field school and the students work, and they're the ones that get down their hands and knees with the trowels and the brushes and look at it. And anytime they find something, they have to stop. The archaeologists come over, the real archaeologists, they take a look at it, decide what it is, whether they keep moving or not. They do, up in the far right corner, they do what's called water sifting as they run water across them. They look for pieces of plant, charcoal. Inevitably, after all these years, you find shotgun shells, 22 casings, where the farmer has been out there shooting or hunting or something like that. They clean all that out. So, back to what I'm with and where I am in our connection with this is I'm with the Exploring Jawara Foundation. Our mission is we educate and engage the public on hands-on archaeology. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're not very big. We've got 4 people on the board of directors. I'm the board president. And we've got members and people who contribute or whatever. And we try to get the public involved. It ends up being around Morganton, which is where we are and where the dig is going. We have a living history village that we built, that's been built in a park in downtown Morganton. It's on the site of a smaller Native American village that they dug up 10 years ago. And we built 2 houses that are replica houses of the kind that would have been there based on the floor plan. A quick change of story, and I told Priscilla this earlier. In Hurricane Helene, this park up here is less than 100 yards from the edge of the Catawba River. It runs around the edge of the park through Morganton. The water, I don't know if you can see this picture very well, the water that went through when we finally got back was right up there around the top of the building. It was at least 12 feet deep going through that park when the Catawba River flooded. I know. What's sad is when we got there, that building is, for all intents and purposes, washed away. It washed out 2 walls. The roof's about to fall. We're going to have to take it down. It's not repairable. It's not, because it was all made of clay and daub. but the water was over 12 feet deep going through that park. The city had ball fields, all the fences are gone, they got rolled up and pushed into the woods. I mentioned to Priscilla earlier, there's a restaurant upstream of where this park is, less than a mile, but they found tin kegs of beer in the trees just past our building that got washed down the stream when the Catawba flooded. But we used that site, and we hopefully, when the park gets reopened again, we're going to be able to get back in there to do programs with schools and with the local people around Burke County. We had and this is, I hate to say it's old, but it's old. We still have one building still stood. Our garden got washed away, and we just fixed it in 1st of August. We had all new beds. It was Native American. We had Native American plantings. We had European plantings. All the stuff was growing. We had new water facilities. It's gone. They all got washed away. We found the boards in the woods down the creek from where it was. We could see where the garden was because the water pipes were still sticking up. Yay, that lasted. We'll be able to use them again. We have public dig days. Back up. This is out of the Berry site. Again, far for y'all, but if you know somebody in the area, plus I'll always make a push. If you know a school teacher or somebody that's interested in this kind of stuff, we have programs designed based with the North Carolina curriculum that we can present to schools. On our website, we tell people in the area, we have public dig days where you go out and you sort like this through the dirt that comes out of the plow zone, and that's where you find all these pieces of pottery that are just so cool. But so we have all these people that come out on those days and can come help us dig and look at it. We have a building in Morganton, which is actually where the students stay when they come to dig. It's a dormitory building. We have a big kitchen in it. There's all kinds of bedrooms and stuff. We support it year-round so they can use it in the summer. And we have a laboratory in the basement where we clean and catalog artifacts. And we have public nights for that. So people can come, they can bring their kids, their grandkids or whatever. You sit there and you just kind of soak. You don't scrub hard, but you scrub the dirt on the artifacts, and then we bag them and catalog them based on where they come from. We have days at the History Museum of Burke County. In fact, there's one next month and that's in downtown Morganton, where people can come if they found stuff in their fields or in the farm or whatever, and you want an archaeologist to take a look at it. I showed you Dr. Moore earlier. This is him looking at some artifacts that people bring in, and he can tell you about them. The man is an expert on all of these. I had an arrowhead that I found in my brother's farm in Virginia, and he looks in and goes, oh yeah, that's woodland area, that's about 1,000 years old, blah, blah, blah. He can pick up that and look at it. He can do it with pottery. It's really funny. Sometimes people will bring in these precious artifacts of theirs, thinking they found something really good, and Dr. Moore's line is sometimes, he hates to do it, but you have to tell people sometimes a rock is just a rock. It's not anything else. And they think they found some great, interesting looking river rock that's been polished, but it's a river rock, But we have that open, so we get involved with the public that way. We do in-school and after-school programmings for local schools in the counties around us, Catawba, Burke, Avery, Caldwell, all those counties around where we are. We can go to their schools. There's some of the programs they come out to us when we can do things with them. We talked about the field school. We have the summer camps at the Berry site where kids can go out and dig under supervision of archaeologists. We're involved with the North Carolina School in Science and Math. They have a big facility in Morganton now built on the campus of the North Carolina School for the Deaf. Very nice place. We're doing work with the Catawba Science Center in Hickory, and we have a traveling museum exhibit that's got a lot of panels much bigger than these with artifacts in it that we take and we set up in like at a college campus. You can set it up in a building there. Now, we'll go back to the story, and ma'am, we were talking about the Spanish and your heritage. So this is going to be the end of my talk, but this is a story I wanted you to hear. Something to think about, and I never did. The archaeologist told me. So here's our triangle we were talking about earlier. So you got Morganton, Salisbury, and Charlotte in that area, right? So here it is today. Morganton, Salisbury, Camden, South Carolina. Let's call it that. So you have the big triangle. Who's from the Charlotte area and knows based on that picture, what's right out here? Reed Gold Mine. Where was that? Reed Gold Mine. Exactly. So, in 1799, thank you, a great lead-in. In 1799, a kid was walking somewhere in the woods right out here near east of Charlotte, barely, in a creek, and he found a really pretty, quote-unquote, yellow rock, 1799. He takes it home, and they use it as a doorstop, is the way the story goes. It was used as a doorstop for about 10 years, and there was a guy came through, saw it, and realized it was a gold nugget. The interesting part was the only way they could prove is that they had to go take it to Fayetteville because that was the closest guy that could assay gold, was in Fayetteville. It was gold. What was that now? We have the gold rush. North Carolina was the first gold rush in the United States. That's why there's a mint in Charlotte, because they minted coins from the gold there. So think about it. 1567, 1568, 1799, they find gold, a picture of a nugget like that. If a Spanish soldier, I submit this to you, think about it, a Spanish soldier out for a walk somewhere in that triangle, stops to get a drink of water, walks through that creek, he finds a gold nugget. They go, gold, this is what we're looking for. This is why we were trying to get our way to Mexico. It's here, we don't need to leave. Think about how the history would have flowed. From that, the Spanish have gone, gold, we're not leaving, we stay put. They would not have let the English settle on the East Coast, because now this is where gold is. It's going to become Spanish. And we could all have been turned and speaking Spanish right now. History would have turned on that, because they would never have allowed the English to come east, or they wouldn't let the English come over and fill that void that I mentioned to you after the Native Americans were gone after 1568. And it would have become Spain. They wouldn't have left. Santa Elena or St. Augustine would have become the capital. La Florida would have stayed where it is, and your Spanish heritage would be Spain. So that's kind of I always, when they told me this, I thought, that is really history turned on just that not happening. What if it had happened? So we always tell people in the area, please come play in the dirt if you want to. If you know somebody in the area, I can't bring you dirt. I'd love to help you to help me wash it. I've got some brochures up here about our organization. If you're just interested in sitting around and want to read it, look at our website, exploringjawara.org. You can just kind of see the things we do, what's going on out at the archaeology site, what they're finding and what they're doing. Please take brochures, take a look at some of the stuff I brought. I'll be glad to answer questions. I believe that's it. Thank you very much for your time. So start with questions then. Yes, sir.
What other of the Spanish sites that you mentioned have active archaeology?
None of the Spanish ones. They haven't found the one at Salisbury. They know it's somewhere, I said the Yadkin River over there. They know it's somewhere on the banks, but no artifacts are coming up that would lend its support. And that idea of it being there, or the one down by Camden, there's not wholly proved pieces of it. Let me stop and back up real quick now that you mentioned that. I mentioned DeSoto at the first, 1540. For years, archaeologists and historians have been trying to document DeSoto's route. We are getting ready to start late this summer or next summer an excavation, a search in an area around Morganton where the archaeologists think DeSoto might have encamped. As I mentioned earlier, he was traveling with 600 soldiers, plus probably their families, horses, cows, pigs, whatever. It was a huge group of people moving, and there's some very big, flat, clear areas outside of Morganton that lend themselves to where he could have encamped. So we've got a bunch of people with metal detectors that are learning how to use them correctly, me for one, and we're going to go out and search these fields in hopes of maybe finding Spanish things that would say even earlier than the Berry site, even earlier than Fort San Juan, and that would be DeSoto going through, and that's 1540. They have found a site in Valdosta, Georgia, that he probably camped at. They find the artifacts. It's on a private plantation near Valdosta. But they found the artifacts, and that lends the idea of where DeSoto marched. So we're hoping either the end of this summer or next year start finding stuff that may be DeSoto, which is even cooler because that's even older, that you find that. Yeah,
Not found human remains?
that I know of in the 20 years, they've only found one. And then that becomes a huge thing. They're not, go ahead.
If the story is as you tell it, that at the end there was a battle, should there not have been human remains somewhere?
Well, the Native Americans, my understanding, they didn't necessarily bury people unless it was some high leader or something, and that would have been in the mounds. They didn't find one in this mound, what was left of it, again, knocked down. The archaeologists tell me bones get moved. Animals, people who use them, they get shuffled up, they get moved. If they're sitting on top, they disintegrate over time. So the answer is no, they haven't found. They found one set of human remains at the Berry site. The whole thing has not been excavated, but for now, they've only found the one. And then those have to be cataloged. You have to deal with the Catawba Nation. And I'll stop and say, these, we call it the Catawba Indians. They have a reservation in Rock Hill, South Carolina. They are proto-Catawbas. They're not Cherokee. Cherokee are further west. This side of the mountains, it's Catawbas. There's several other groups, but the Catawba is the overarching name for the group that was there. So you have to deal with them on a lot of it because it's still considered their land and their people and their ancestors. Yeah, but the answer is no, they've only found one so far.
Do the Catawbas have any stories that are reflective of what you're doing? Do they remember the Spanish?
The Catawbas, no. It's what we're finding and the story that we're able to tell based on what we're finding, based on what the archaeologists and the historians found in the Spanish libraries, like the application for the pension. That's where the story is coming from. But the Native American tribes, after mid 1600s, start kind of fading away or blending and fading. I don't want to say fade. They start blending, much like the Lumbee are, they're not, it's not a purebred, but they're Native Americans, much like the Catawbas are, but you can't say today's Catawbas or those Catawbas. There was too many tribes and too many blendings. When they would have battles, they mingled their populations, that type of thing. Yes, ma'am?
Do we know anything about the language?
No. I know, well, Cherokee is a given language, but the Catawba, I don't know. I don't know what they speak and what they did. The translator that I think, as I remember from the Spanish documents that I was told, the translator was a Spaniard who was another one who knew a Native American woman, and they could kind of translate, much like Lewis and Clark had Sacagawea who helped her, but her husband was French, and the Americans had to talk to the French guy who had to talk to the Native American woman who had to talk to the Native American, so I think it kind of worked that way.
Okay.
Yeah. What else? Anything else? Yes, sir.
The markings on the pottery, are they purely decorative?
Pretty much. There's some, where did it go? There's one piece here, I don't remember which one it was. They would put little effigy figures on them that may not have been decorative. I mean, they look cool when we find the little figurehead and you go, oh, an effigy head off a pot, yay. That's really exciting to find that kind of stuff. But otherwise, it was daily cookware. If you look at it, and if they broke a pot when they were cooking, they just threw it down on the ground and had another one ready. And that's why we find so much. Yeah. But most of it, it's the daily use cookware. Anything else? Well, please feel free to come up, take a look at the artifacts. I'll be able to explain some of them. Some of it is a reconstruction to show what they would have looked like. I do have some pieces of an axe head that's original, a drill point that's original from late 1500s, 1400s, pictures at the site, and then brochures. So please come and take a look. Please ask questions. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your attention. And please take a look at our website sometime. I got some business cards. You can look at that. Go on our website and see just what's going on with archaeology. But thank you very much.
Thank you for history lesson.
Yeah, your history lesson today. Exactly.
So